Close your eyes and breathe. Imagine a world covered in the soft, gray mist of time, a world where the stars were the only clock, and the earth was a silent witness to things we are told never happened. Tonight, we journey back to find the echoes of a machine that should not be, built by hands that history says were too primitive to hold a gear. Let the weight of the centuries pull you into a deep, restful calm. Close your eyes. Visualize a horizon where the sky and the earth are blurred by a fine golden haze of dust. You are standing in a place where time has no meaning, a remote corner of the world, far from the hum of electricity, the glare of neon lights, and the frantic pace of the modern age. Here the air is dry, tasting faintly of ancient minerals and sun-baked stone. The wind does not howl. It whispers, a low-frequency hum that vibrates through the soles of your boots, carrying the secrets of 1,000 forgotten generations. We are in the heart of a high-altitude desert, a valley tucked between peaks that have watched the rise and fall of empires with stony indifference. This is not the glamorous archaeology of Hollywood. There are no golden idols or booby-trapped corridors. There is only the dirt. The endless, patient, heavy dirt dot. The sun is beginning its slow, deliberate descent toward the western ridge. It hangs in the sky like a copper coin, casting long, purple shadows that stretch across the excavation pits like the fingers of a giant. In the distance, the rhythmic ching-ching-chink of a trowel hitting a stubborn rock provides the only heartbeat for this desolate landscape. It is a steady sound, predictable and grounding. You find yourself at the edge of Trench 7. This particular trench has been a source of quiet frustration for weeks. According to the geological strata, the layers of earth we are moving through date back nearly 12,000 years. This was the end of the last great ice age, a time when humanity was supposed to be nothing more than nomadic hunters, moving with the herds, clutching spears of flint and bone. The history books tell us that there was no industry then. There were no machines. There was no metal dot. And yet, as you lower yourself into the trench, the dust settling on your shoulders like a heavy blanket, you feel a strange magnetic pull toward the corner of the pit. The heat of the day is still trapped in the walls of the trench, a warm, earthy smell that envelops you. You kneel on a padded mat, the grit grinding softly beneath your weight. In your hand is a small, soft-bristled brush. This is the primary tool of the seeker, not a shovel, not a pickaxe, but a brush. It requires a level of patience that borderlines on meditation. To be an archaeologist is to be a master of the slow reveal dot you begin to move the brush. Left to right. Right to left dot, the dust is fine, like powdered silk. With every stroke, a microscopic layer of the past is swept away. You are moving through centuries with every minute. A millimeter of soil represents a decade of rainfall, of droughts, of silent winters. You watch the dust particles dance in a single shaft of late afternoon sunlight that has managed to find its way into the depths of the trench. They swirl in lazy spirals, caught in the thermal currents of your own breath. Suddenly, the bristles of the brush catch on something. It isn't the dull, thudding resistance of a limestone pebble or the brittle snap of a fossilized root. It is a resistance that feels solid, unyielding. You pause. You take a slow, deep breath, letting the stillness of the desert fill your lungs. In this world of boring history, there is no rush. The object has stayed hidden for 12 millennia. It can wait another few minutes. You switch to a smaller brush, one with fine camel hair bristles. You focus on a space no larger than a postage stamp. You brush away a layer of hematite-stained clay, and there, beneath the red dust, a glint of something impossible emerges. It is a dull, greenish gold color, the unmistakable patina of oxidized metal. Your heart doesn't race. Instead, it slows down, syncing with the ancient rhythm of the earth. You clear away more dirt, moving with the precision of a surgeon. The shape begins to take form. It isn't a coin, and it isn't a blade. It is a curve. A perfect, mathematically precise curve that no river wash or geological pressure could ever produce. As you clear a wider circle, you realize that the metal is not a single piece. There are lines, grooves, tiny, microscopic indentations that run parallel to one another, with a spacing so consistent it suggests the use of a lathe or a gear cutter. You sit back for a moment, resting your hands on your knees. The silence of the excavation site is absolute now. The other workers have packed their kits. The distant hum of the supply truck has faded. You are alone with a piece of technology that, according to every rule of history we have written, should not exist. The metal is cold to the touch, despite the lingering heat of the trench. When your fingertip brushes against the exposed surface, you feel a faint vibration. Perhaps it is just the wind, or perhaps it is the ghost of the machine's last movement. Trapped in the crystalline structure of the bronze you begin to uncover a circular element. It looks like a wheel, but its edges are notched. 1 tooth, 2 teeth, 3. They are perfectly preserved, shielded from the corrosive breath of oxygen by the very soil you are now removing. This is not the crude hammered copper of a primitive tribe. This is an alloy, a sophisticated blend of elements that requires a furnace capable of reaching temperatures far beyond what a wood fire can provide. Who stood here 12,000 years ago and dropped this? Was it a tool? A navigator's instrument? A piece of a clock that measured the movements of stars we no longer recognize? The shadows in the trench are growing deeper now, turning from purple to a bruised, heavy indigo. You realize that you have been brushing the same square inch for nearly an hour, lost in the hypnotic repetition of the task. The world outside the trench, the world of internet, of politics, of noise, has vanished. There is only the brush, the dust, and the metal. You see a small inscription, or perhaps they are just scratches. You lean in closer, your breath hitching. They are symbols. Not cuneiform, not hieroglyphics. They are geometric, resembling the traces of a circuit board or the star charts of a navigator. They are elegant, etched with a confidence that implies a long tradition of literacy and science. As you prepare to cover the site for the night, protecting the find from the desert frost, you feel a profound sense of peace. The mystery doesn't need to be solved tonight. The boring history of our world is much deeper and more complex than we were ever taught in school. We are not the first to dream, to build, or to calculate. We are simply the latest dot. You climb out of the trench, your joints stiff, but your mind quiet. The first stars are beginning to pierce the velvet canopy of the sky. Polaris, Orion, the Pleiades, they are the same stars that the builder of that bronze gear looked at. The machine in the dirt and the stars in the sky are parts of the same silent conversation. You walk back toward the base camp, the sand muffled beneath your feet. Tomorrow, the brushes will come out again. Tomorrow, we will reveal another millimeter. But for now, the desert returns to its slumber, and the artifact remains cradled in the dark, cold embrace of the earth, waiting for the light of another day. The morning air at the excavation site is brittle and thin. Before the sun fully crests the jagged horizon, the world is painted in shades of slate and ash. There is a specific kind of silence that exists only in the high desert. At dawn, a silence so heavy, it feels like a physical weight pressing against your ears. You sit at the edge of the trench, a ceramic mug of tea between your hands, watching the steam rise in a straight, unhurried line. Today, we move beyond the surface. Today, we look into the very marrow of the object we found yesterday. We look at the atoms, the alloys, and the impossible chemistry of the ancient world. You climb back down into the earth. The walls of the trench are cold now, the moisture from the night air having turned the clay into a soft, malleable skin. You reach for the artifact, which has been partially encased in a protective plaster jacket overnight. But before you lift it, you observe its resting place one more time. This layer of earth is known to geologists as the B horizon. It is a dense, reddish-brown clay, rich in iron oxides. It was deposited here during a period of massive climatic shifting, roughly 11,600 years ago. In the world of Orthodox history, this was a time of survival, not science. And yet, cradled in this prehistoric cradle is a piece of metal that defies the timeline. You reach out and touch the exposed edge of the object. It is cold, a deep, sinking cold that seems to bypass the skin and settle directly into the bone. This is the thermal conductivity of metal, a property that distinguishes it from the surrounding stone and soil. It draws the heat from your fingertip, a silent exchange of energy that has been waiting for 12 millennia to occur. As you begin to clean the surface more thoroughly, the true nature of the material reveals itself. It is not pure copper. Pure copper is soft, a vibrant orange red that bows and bends under pressure. This material is different. It has a hardness, a structural integrity that suggests a deliberate, sophisticated mixture. You notice the patina, the skin of the metal. Over thousands of years, the copper in the alloy has reacted with the trace amounts of oxygen and moisture trapped in the clay. The result is a magnificent crust of malachite green and azurite blue. It is a living record of time. If you look closely through your magnifying lens, the patina looks like a microscopic mountain range peaks of emerald green and valleys of deep oceanic turquoise. It is a slow-motion explosion of chemistry, a fire that takes 1,000 years to burn a single millimeter dot as you brush away the last of the loose sediment. The weight of the object becomes apparent. You slide your hands beneath it and lift. It is surprisingly heavy. This density tells a story. It speaks of a high concentration of tin, or perhaps arsenic elements added to copper to transform it into bronze. Bronze is not a gift of nature. It is a gift to forge. To create it, one must find copper ore and tin ore, which rarely occur together in the same geographic region. One must then crush the ore, heat it to temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius, and blend them in a precise ratio, usually 9 parts copper to 1 part tin. Think about that for a moment as you feel the weight in your palms. In an era where history says humans were barely stitching animal skins together for warmth, someone was managing a supply chain that spanned hundreds of miles. Someone was maintaining a furnace hot enough to liquefy rock. Someone was calculating the exact percentage of tin needed to ensure the gear was hard enough to function, but not so brittle that it would shatter. The texture of the metal under your thumb is hypnotic. In some areas where the patina has chipped away, you see the true metal beneath. It isn't the bright gold of modern bronze. It has a deeper, darker luster, a result of the specific trace elements found in the ancient ore. There are hints of nickel, perhaps a touch of silver. These are the fingerprints of the mine. Every mine in the ancient world had its own unique chemical signature, ADNA of the earth. You imagine the cooling process of this object. After the molten metal was poured into a mold, likely a two-part mold made of fine-grained sand or carved stone, it had to cool slowly. If it cooled too fast, internal stresses would form, creating microscopic cracks. If it cooled too slowly, the grain structure of the metal would become too coarse. The smoothness of the gear's teeth suggests they weren't just cast, they were finished. You can see the faint, rhythmic striations left by an abrasive, perhaps a slurry of emery or crushed garnet. The person who made this understood friction. They understood that for a machine to work, its parts must be smoother than the eye can see. As you sit in the silence of the trench, the sun begins to warm the back of your neck. The desert is waking up, but down here, in the shadow of the past, the air remains still. You find yourself focusing on a single circular indentation near the center of the artifact. It is a bearing seat, a place where another part once rested and rotated. The precision is staggering. You take out your calipers, the metal clicking softly as you adjust the slide. You measure the diameter of the hole. Then you measure it again, rotating the artifact 45 degrees. The measurements are identical to the 1/10 of a millimeter. In a world without electricity, without lasers, without computer-controlled lathes, how is this symmetry achieved? The answer lies in the boring reality of ancient patience. It lies in the use of a bow drill, a tool that uses the rhythmic back and forth motion of a string to create a steady, rotating force. It lies in the steady hand of a craftsman who did not measure time in minutes or hours, but in the progress of the tool against the metal. The smell of the artifact is also distinct. It doesn't smell like the dirt. It has a sharp, metallic tongue, a scent of electricity and old coins. It is the smell of industry before the Industrial Revolution. You begin to wonder about the soil layer again. Geologically, this shouldn't be here. The law of superposition states that in an undisturbed sequence of rocks, the oldest layers are at the bottom. This artifact was found beneath a layer of volcanic ash from an eruption that occurred 10,000 years ago. It is sealed in time. It is an anachronism, a thing out of place, a ghost in the machinery of history. The cold weight of the bronze seems to pull at your thoughts, grounding you in the physical reality of the find. This isn't a myth. This isn't a story told by campfire light. This is 3 pounds of solid scientific evidence that the story of humanity is much older and much more complicated than we have dared to imagine. You run your fingers over the malachite crust one last time. It feels like Braille, a language of texture that tells of a high civilization that vanished so completely that only its hardest, densest thoughts remained behind in the clay. The wind picks up outside the trench, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush. You prepare to wrap the artifact in acid-free tissue and place it in a padded crate. As you do, you feel a sense of stewardship. You are the bridge between the person who poured this metal and the world that will eventually see it. For now, the artifact is quiet. It has returned to its state of rest, a cold, heavy mystery wrapped in the colors of the earth. The sun has reached its zenith, hanging suspended in the vast, pale canopy of the desert sky. From the depth of the trench, you look up and see the world through a rectangular frame of earth. The light here is different. It is indirect, softened by the high walls of clay, creating a sanctuary of stillness. Today, our journey does not move deeper into the ground, but into the invisible architecture of the mind. We are exploring the geometry of the ancients, the slow, rhythmic calculation of space and time that allowed a supposedly primitive people to achieve a precision that rivals our modern lasers. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a world without a ruler, without a compass, and without a spirit level. Imagine a world where the only straight line is the horizon, and the only perfect circle is the full moon rising over the dunes. How, then, did the creators of our bronze artifact achieve a symmetry so perfect that it defies the natural chaos of the wild? The answer lies in the shadows. Geometry, in its truest and most ancient form, was not a set of equations in a textbook. It was an observational dance with the sun. To the people of this lost era, the sun was the primary architect. They understood that a vertical pole, a simple, straight branch driven into the soft earth, was a tool of divine precision. This was the GNOMON dot. As you sit in the silence of the excavation site, visualize the process. It is early morning, thousands of years ago. A craftsman stands on a leveled patch of silt. He watches the shadow of the pole. It is long, thin, and stretching toward the west. He marks the tip of the shadow with a small white pebble. Then he waits. In this boring history, there is no rush. Time is not measured in seconds, but in the slow, sweeping arc of the shadow as it shortens toward midday. Every hour, another pebble is placed. By sunset, a perfect curve has been traced upon the earth. By connecting the points where the shadow is shortest, the craftsman finds the true north-south meridian. By drawing a line perpendicular to this, he finds the east and the west. This is the birth of the 90-degree angle. It was not invented. It was discovered through the patient observation of the cosmic clock. You run your hand along the edge of the bronze gear found in the trench. You can feel that same 90-degree precision in the alignment of its teeth. The ancient engineers knew that if their angles were off by even a fraction of a degree, the machine would bind. It would grind. It would fail. To them, geometry was not just math. It was the difference between a working miracle and a useless lump of metal. Now, consider the circle. To us, a circle is a simple shape. To the ancients, it was a symbol of the infinite, the cycle of seasons, and the shape of the celestial bodies. To create the perfect circularity of the gear, they used the most basic of tools, a piece of cord. Visualize a length of dried gut or flaxen rope. One end is pinned to a center point. The other holds a sharp flint scribe. The cord is pulled taut. This is the radius. As the scribe is rotated around the center, a perfect circle is born. But the secret to the artifact's precision wasn't just in the drawing. It was in the division. How do you divide a circle into equal parts without a protractor? You use the radius itself. If you take the length of the cord used to draw the circle and walk it along the circumference, it fits exactly 6 times. This creates a hexagon, the fundamental geometry of the honeycomb and the snowflake. By bisecting these arcs again and again, the ancient craftsman could create 12, 24, or 60 divisions. This is why our artifact has 60 notches. It is a mechanical representation of the sexagesimal system, the same system we use today to measure our minutes and our hours. As you sit in the trench, the realization settles over you like the cooling afternoon breeze. The very way you perceive time was etched into bronze 12,000 years ago. The precision of these Stone Age mathematicians was achieved through a process of iteration. They did not build once. They refined 1,000 times. They used master templates made of hard basalt or diorite. They would rub two stones together with sand and water between them. Through the sheer repetitive motion of grinding back and forth, hour after hour, the surfaces would eventually become perfectly flat. If you grind 3 stones against each other in rotation, it is mathematically impossible for them to be anything other than perfectly flat. This is the beauty of ancient technology. It didn't require complex machines. It required a profound understanding of physical laws and an infinite capacity for patience. You look at the microscopic grooves on the gear again. They suggest the use of a dividing engine, a primitive but effective way to ensure each tooth was spaced identically. Perhaps it was a large wooden wheel, 5 feet in diameter, used as a master guide to cut the smaller bronze piece. The larger the guide, the smaller the margin of error. The air in the excavation site is growing heavy with the scent of sun-warmed sage. You watch a hawk circling high above, a tiny speck of geometry against the blue. It moves in a perfect spiral, riding the thermals. The ancients watched this too. They saw geometry in the flight of birds, in the spiral of a seashell, and in the hexagonal crystalline structure of the quartz they mined. They did not see themselves as separate from nature. To them, building a machine with perfect angles was a way of aligning human work with the laws of the universe. They believed that if a machine was built with the correct geometry, it would capture a portion of the cosmic harmony. As you prepare to leave the trench for the evening, you notice how the shadows of the excavation equipment create sharp, dark lines across the dirt. These shadows are the same ones that guided the ancient architects. The tools have changed. We have steel and computers, but the principles of the 3-4-5 triangle and the properties of the circle remain unchanged. The mystery of the artifact is not just how it was made, but why they pursued such perfection. In an age of stone, why did they need a gear that was accurate to a hair's breadth? Perhaps the answer isn't in what the machine did, but in what it represented, a bridge between the chaotic earth and the orderly stars. You climb the ladder, feeling the rhythmic pull in your muscles. The sun is a deep, bruised orange now, dipping below the mountains. The shadows are stretching long again, returning to the west, completing the daily cycle. You leave the artifact in its dark chamber, a masterpiece of ancient geometry waiting for the dawn. The desert is silent, the wind has died down, and the world is a series of silhouettes and soft curves. As you walk back to your tent, the stars begin to appear, the ultimate geometry, the perfect grid of the night sky, which guided the hands of the craftsmen 12 millennia ago. The evening has settled over the excavation site like a heavy, velvet curtain. The stars are vibrant now, pulsing with a cold, distant light that seems to mirror the metallic glint of the artifact resting on your laboratory table. In the quiet of the research tent, away from the dust and wind, the world feels small, focused entirely on a single circle of light cast by your desk lamp. Within that circle lies a machine or a fragment of one that challenges the very gravity of our historical understanding. Tonight, we look closer at the teeth. We look at the motion. We imagine the ghost of a machine that has not turned in 12,000 years. Take a long, slow breath. Imagine the stillness of this object. For eons, it was held in the crushing grip of the earth, motionless, silent, and forgotten. But it was designed for the exact opposite of stillness. It was designed for movement. It was designed for the rhythmic, repeating cycle of the gear dot as you look through the magnifying glass, the interlocking teeth of the artifact come into sharp focus. There are dozens of them, each one hand-carved or precision cast with an incredible degree of uniformity. In modern engineering, we call this involute geometry, the specific curve of a gear tooth that allows it to roll against another without slipping or vibrating. To see this curve here, in a layer of earth older than the invention of the wheel, is a quiet shock to the system. Imagine the sound if you were to reach out and nudge the primary wheel very gently. With the tip of a fine wooden stylus, what would you hear? 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 years ago, this metal didn't have the green crust of oxidation. It was bright. It was polished. When it turned, it wouldn't have made a grinding sound. It would have been a soft, rhythmic click-purr-click-click. Purr. Click-dot, it is the sound of intelligence. It is the sound of time being broken down into small, manageable increments. Visualize the entire mechanism as it might have looked in its prime. It isn't just one wheel. To be a gear, it must have a partner. You see the shadow of a second, smaller spindle nearby in the clay. When the large wheel turned once, the smaller one might have turned 3 times, or perhaps 7. This is the magic of gear ratios, the ability to change the speed of a movement, to multiply force, or to track the slow, agonizingly gradual movement of the planets against the fast, flickering seconds of a human life dot in the boring history of our ancestors. We often assume they lived only in the present, reacting to the weather and the hunt. But a gear tells a different story. A gear is a promise. It is a way of saying, I know what will happen next. It is a way of predicting the future through the steady, mechanical rotation of bronze. You watch the way the light catches the edge of a single tooth. It is slightly worn on one side. This is operational wear. It tells us that this machine wasn't a ritual object or a piece of jewelry. It was used. It worked. It spent hours, days, perhaps years, turning against its counterpart. The motion would have been hypnotic. Imagine a master astronomer in a temple of stone, the air thick with the scent of cedar smoke and old parchment. He reaches out a hand, weathered by the sun, and turns a small crank at the side of a wooden box. Inside, these bronze gears begin their dance. They move with a fluid, liquid grace. There is no friction, only the perfect transfer of energy from one wheel to the next dot as the gears turn. A set of hands on the outside of the box move. One hand tracks the sun. Another tracks the moon, showing its phases from a sliver of silver to a full, glowing orb. A third hand, moving so slowly you can barely see it, tracks the transit of Venus. This is an anachronism in motion. It is a computer made of metal and thought dot in the silence of your tent. You can almost feel the phantom vibration of the machine. The boring history for sleep is not just about the past. It is about the continuity of the human mind. We have always wanted to organize the chaos. We have always wanted to find the rhythm in the stars. The gear is a circle with a memory. Unlike a simple wheel, which can slip on the ice or the mud, a gear cannot forget its position. Every tooth is a notch in the record of time. Think about the patience required to create this. Each tooth had to be filed down, checked against its neighbor, and tested for fit. If one tooth was too thick, the machine would jam. If one was too thin, it would skip. The craftsman would have sat in the cooling twilight, much like you are sitting now, using a small stone file to remove a microscopic sliver of bronze, then blowing the dust away with a soft puff of air. Puff. The dust of the bronze falls to the floor. The gear is tested again. Smooth, perfect. This is the impossible gear, because it suggests that the Industrial Revolution wasn't the first time we mastered the machine. It suggests that there was a silent revolution, long ago, a time when humanity reached a peak of technical brilliance, only to have the flame extinguished by some forgotten catastrophe. Now, the gear is frozen. The rust, that beautiful emerald green patina, acts as a glue, locking the teeth together in a final eternal embrace. It is a statue of a movement, but in your mind, you can still see the potential energy stored within it. You can see the way the light would have played across the polished surfaces as they spun. The lamp on your desk flickers slightly. The desert wind brushes against the canvas of the tent, a soft shishi sound that mimics the turning of the wheels. You realize that you are breathing in time with the imagined rhythm of the artifact. In 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. The machine is not dead. It is merely sleeping. It is waiting for someone to understand its language. Again, the language of ratios, of circles, and of the inevitable mechanical flow of time. As you prepare to turn off the light and head to your cot, you take one last look at the interlocking teeth. They are a bridge across 12,000 years. They remind us that even in the deepest antiquity, there were minds that saw the world as a puzzle to be solved, a clock to be wound, and a song to be played in the key of bronze. The boring history of the world is a long, slow rotation, and we are just one tooth on the wheel, turning in the dark, moving toward a dawn we cannot yet see. The night outside the excavation tent has grown cold, but in your mind, we are traveling to a place of intense, radiating heat. We are leaving the silent, dusty trenches of the present and stepping into the flickering orange glow of a laboratory that existed 12 millennia ago. Imagine the forge. It is not a factory of steel and concrete. It is a sanctuary of earth and fire, built into the side of a hill to catch the natural drafting of the evening wind. The air here is thick, not with the scent of desert sage, but with the heavy, metallic aroma of roasting ore and the sweet charcoal smoke of burning hardwood. To create the impossible gear we have been studying, one must first master the element of fire. But this is not the fire of a campfire or a torch. This is controlled, concentrated heat, a river of fire, capable of turning solid rock into liquid light. Visualize the furnace. It is a beehive-shaped structure made of thick, sun-dried clay and tempered with straw. Inside, the charcoal glows with a color that sits somewhere between a bruised purple and a blinding white. This is the heart of the ancient world's industry. To reach the temperatures required for bronze over 1,000 degrees Celsius, the ancient smiths used bellows made of goatskin, whoosh, hiss. Whoosh. The sound is rhythmic. It is the breathing of the forge. With every squeeze of the bellows, oxygen is forced into the embers, and the temperature rises. You can feel the heat on your skin, even from a distance dry, stinging warmth that makes the air shimmer and dance. Now, look at the crucibles. These are small, thick-walled bowls made of graphite or highly refractory clay. Inside them, the bones of the earth are being transformed. There are greenish chunks of malachite, rich in copper, and heavy, dark stones containing tin. To the uninitiated, they look like common rocks. To the mastersmith, they are the ingredients for a miracle dot. As the heat intensifies, the chemistry begins. The transition from solid to liquid is not sudden. It is a slow, agonizingly beautiful process of sweating. First, a bead of bright, liquid copper appears on the surface of the ore like a drop of blood from a stone. Then another. They begin to run together, forming small, glowing rivulets that gather at the bottom of the crucible. This is the river of molten glass and fire. When the metal is fully liquefied, it looks like a pool of captured sunlight. Its surface is a mirror of molten gold, rippling with every vibration of the earth. But it is dangerous. It is heavy. A single crucible of molten bronze weighs far more than you would expect. A dense liquid that carries the literal weight of the mountains it came from. The smith uses long, wooden tongs, their ends charred black from years of service, to lift the crucible from the heart of the coals. The air around the crucible turns a violent shade of orange dot. Now comes the moment of the pour. Visualize a mold carved from a single block of fine-grained steatite, or perhaps a lost wax cast made of delicate clay. The mold has been preheated, so the sudden shock of the metal doesn't shatter it. The smith tilts his wrist. The movement is steady, practiced, and incredibly slow. The liquid bronze leaves the crucible in a continuous glowing thread. It flows into the narrow opening of the mold with a soft, sizzling sound, the sound of moisture escaping the clay. It fills the voids. It wraps around the negative space where the gear teeth will be. It is a river finding its new home. But the most important part of this boring history isn't the heat. It is the cooling dot in the modern world. We want things fast. In the ancient world, they understood the power of the slow cold. If the metal cools too quickly, the atoms become trapped in a chaotic, brittle grid. If it cools with a measured, rhythmic descent in temperature, the crystals grow large and strong. The smith covers the mold with hot ash. This acts as a blanket, holding the heat in, allowing the temperature to drop by only a few degrees. Every hour dot imagines sitting by that cooling mold as the stars move across the sky. The forge has gone quiet. The bellows are still. There is only the ticking sound of the metal contracting, a tiny metallic tink, tink, tink as the bronze settles into its permanent shape. This is where the experimental alloys come in. In our artifact, we found traces of something unusual, perhaps a pinch of antimony or a dash of arsenic. The ancient smiths were like alchemists, whispering to the fire, adding a handful of secret earth to change the color of the flame and the hardness of the finished ear. They were looking for the perfect balance, a metal that could cut stone, but wouldn't break under the pressure of the machine dot as you sit in the silence of your own time. Think about the patience of that cooling process. It is a meditation on transformation. The rock has become fire. The fire has become liquid. The liquid has become a machine. The orange glow of the furnace in your mind begins to fade now, replaced by the soft blue light of the dying embers. The river of fire has solidified. It is now a dull, dark shape inside a clay shell, waiting to be broken out, polished, and set into motion. The heat is gone, leaving only a lingering warmth in the air and a sense of profound accomplishment. The chemistry of the ancients wasn't written in books. It was written in the sparks that flew from the anvil and the slow, rhythmic cooling of the bronze. You take a deep, slow breath. The air is cool now. The forge is dark. The miracle is complete. The desert night is a vast, echoing chamber. If you listen closely, past the rustle of the wind against your tent, you can almost hear the low, rhythmic thud of the sound of stone meeting stone, and the deep, collective exhale of 1,000 men moving as one. Tonight, we step away from the delicate bronze gears of the laboratory and stand at the foot of the giants. We are looking at the monoliths, those impossible slabs of granite and limestone that weigh as much as modern locomotives. Many look at these stones and see a mystery that requires magic or extraterrestrial intervention. But in the boring history of our ancestors, the truth is far more grounded, far more rhythmic, and infinitely more meditative. It is a mystery solved not by machines of light, but by the physics of wood, the chemistry of water, and the incredible power of the slow, repetitive step. Imagine a block of stone. It is a piece of the mountain itself, freshly quarried. It is 60 feet long and weighs 800 tons. It sits in the quarry, a silent, gray titan, appearing as immovable as the earth it came from. But the ancients did not see immovability. They saw potential energy. They saw a journey. Visualize the path ahead of this stone. It is not a paved road. It is a trackway of leveled silt and clay, stretching miles across the undulating terrain. To move this mountain, the ancients did not rely on brute force alone. They relied on the elimination of friction. First, imagine the rollers deep in the forests. Specialized woodcutters selected the hardest timber, perhaps Lebanese cedar or ancient oak. These logs were stripped of their bark and sanded until they were perfectly cylindrical. Hundreds of these rollers were laid side by side, forming a wooden river beneath the stone. Thump, roll, thump. As the stone moved forward, the rollers at the back are picked up, carried to the front, and laid down once more. It is a continuous, looping cycle of mechanical prayer that moves at the speed of a snail. But there is a secret to this movement. If you tried to pull 800 tons over dry wood and sand, the heat of the friction would eventually ignite the rollers. And so, we look to the water pourers. Imagine a group of workers walking just ahead of the stone. They carry large ceramic jars filled with a mixture of water and fine, silty clay, a prehistoric lubricant. With a rhythmic, swaying motion, they pour the liquid onto the sand in front of the rollers. Splash, sizzle, slide. The water creates a thin, microscopic film between the sand and the wood. It reduces the coefficient of friction, just enough that the stone begins to glide. It no longer feels like a dead weight. It becomes a vessel floating on a sea of mud. Now, think of the pullers. There are no engines here. There are only ropes-thick braided cables of hemp and papyrus, as wide as a man's thigh. Thousands of hands grip these ropes, but they do not pull in a chaotic struggle. That would break the ropes and the spirits of the men. Instead, They pull to the rhythm of a song leader. The leader stands atop the monolith itself, a small figure against the sky. He holds two wooden blocks. Clack, clack, clack. With every clack, 1,000 boots shift in the sand. With every clack, 1,000 backs straighten. With every clack, the 800-ton giant groans and moves forward exactly 1 inch. 1 inch. In our world, an inch is nothing. In the boring history of the monolith, an inch is a victory. To move the stone a mile might take a month. To move it 10 miles might take a year. But the ancients were not obsessed with the now. They were building for the forever. They understood that time was their most abundant resource. As you lie there, imagine the sensation of being part of that line. The sun is warm on your shoulders. The sand is soft beneath your feet. Your breath is synchronized with the man in front of you and the man behind you. You are no longer an individual. You are a single cell in a massive human machine. There is a profound, sleepy comfort in this repetition. Step, pull, breathe, reset, step, pull, breathe, reset. The echoes in the monolith are the sounds of the stone talking back. As it rolls over the logs, the wood groans under the immense pressure. It is a deep subsonic frequency that you feel in your chest more than you hear in your ears. It sounds like the earth itself is humming a low, ancient lullaby. Why did they do it? Why move these stones at all when smaller blocks would have been easier? Perhaps it was because they knew that the larger the stone, the longer the memory. A wall made of 1,000 small stones can be taken apart by 1,000 small hands. But a wall made of giants requires the strength of an entire civilization to move, and thus it stays moved. It becomes a permanent mark on the face of the world. As the sun sets on the quarry path, the work doesn't stop. The song changes to a slower evening tempo. The water pourers continue their rhythmic splashes, the liquid looking like silver in the moonlight. The monolith moves another few feet, inching toward its final destination, where it will be raised to meet the stars. The physics of it is simple. The labor of it is immense, but the spirit of it is quiet. There is no shouting, no panic, no rush to meet a quarterly deadline. There is only the wood, the water, the stone, and the steady, hypnotic beat of the human heart. You can feel that beat now. It is the same beat as the clock on your wall or the pulse in your wrist. It is the rhythm of history, not the loud, violent history of battles, but the boring, beautiful history of people moving mountains. 1 inch at a time, a monolith has reached its resting place for the night. The ropes are slackened. The rollers are inspected. The desert returns to its silence, but the stone is different now. It has been moved by the will of the living, and it carries the echoes of their footsteps within its cold granite heart. You breathe out. The weight of the day feels like that stone solid, heavy, but ready to be moved into the darkness of sleep. The rhythm of the clack, clack, clack fag fades into the distance, leaving you in the perfect, silent center of the world. Close your eyes and let the weight of your body sink into the surface beneath you. Imagine that the ceiling above you has dissolved, replaced by the infinite velvet canopy of a prehistoric night. There is no moon tonight, only the stars. Thousands upon thousands of silver pinpricks, scattered like diamond dust across a floor of obsidian. In the modern world, we have forgotten what true darkness looks like. But 12,000 years ago, the night was a profound, living entity. And for the people who lived then, The sky was not a mystery to be feared. It was a map to be read. Tonight, we look at the silent astrolabe. An astrolabe is often called the world's first analog computer. It is a handheld model of the universe. Imagine holding a heavy, circular disc of polished bronze in your hand. It is cold, steady, and silent. This device does not have a battery. It does not have a screen. Its power comes from the alignment of geometry with the rotation of the Earth, the redi, the top layer of the astrolabe. It is a delicate, skeletonized lattice of bronze, with tiny points pointing toward the most prominent stars: Sirius, Aldebaran, Regulus, and Vega. Beneath the redi lies the plate, engraved with the coordinates of the horizon and the zenith. When you turn the redi, you are literally moving the heavens with your thumb. She. The sound of the bronze discs sliding against one another is a soft, metallic whisper. It is the sound of time being measured. Now, look up at the Milky Way. In this ancient desert, it is not a faint smudge. It is a brilliant, glowing river of light. It arches from horizon to horizon, a celestial backbone. Imagine the slow, imperceptible drift of this river. If you were to lie perfectly still for an hour, you would see it shift by 15 degrees, the exact width of your hand held at arm's length. This is the boring history of the cosmos. It is a motion so slow that it bypasses the frantic part of your brain and speaks directly to your nervous system. It is the rhythm of the universe's breath. The ancient astronomer sitting on the edge of the trench we explored earlier was a master of this rhythm. He didn't need a telescope to see the planets. He knew them by their behavior. He watched Mars, the wandering red one. While the stars moved in a predictable, united formation, Mars was a rebel. It would move forward across the sky night after night, then suddenly slow down, stop, and spend weeks moving backward in a retrograde loop before resuming its path. To track this with an astrolabe required a patience that is almost unimaginable today. It required sitting in the cold air, wrapped in a heavy wool cloak, and marking the position of the planet against the fixed stars every single night for months. Mark. Wait. Observe. Mark. Wait. Observe. The astrolabe mirrored this complexity. On the back of the device, there were eccentric circles and interlocking scales. When the astronomer turned the dial to match the date and the hour, the device would tell him where Mars would be 6 months from now. It was a bridge between the present moment and a future, yet unseen. As you lie there, imagine the stars reflecting in the dark, still water of a primitive stone basin. The reflection is perfect. The water is a mirror, and the sky is the original. The astrolabe is the third element, the human translation of that relationship. Think about the precession of the equinoxes. This is perhaps the slowest, boring fact of history. The Earth wobbles on its axis like a spent top. This wobble is so slow that it takes 25,920 years to complete one single circle. And yet, the artifacts we find in the deep layers of the Earth suggest that the ancients knew about it. They noticed that over hundreds of years, the stars shifted ever so slightly. They built that shift into their gears. They built that shift into their bronze. The silent astrolabe was a way to hold the infinite in the palm of a hand. Visualize the astronomer's thumb rubbing the edge of the bronze disc. The metal has been worn smooth by generations of use. The inscription's tiny, geometric ciphers are nearly invisible in the starlight, but the astronomer knows them by touch. He doesn't need to see the device to work it. He feels the symmetry. The night air is growing cooler. The Milky Way has drifted further toward the west. The constellation of Orion is rising, his belt of 3 stars perfectly aligned. Like a row of silent sentinels, there is a profound comfort in knowing that the stars you are imagining now are the same ones that governed the lives of the people 12,000 years ago. The sky is the only part of the ancient world that hasn't been buried, broken, or oxidized. It is the only part of the advanced technology that is still fully functional. The planets continue their slow, gravitational waltz. Saturn, the slowest of the visible wanderers, takes nearly 30 years to cross the sky. Imagine the dedication of a culture that tracked a single planet for 3 decades, just to calibrate one gear in a bronze machine. It is a level of commitment to boring detail that borders on the sacred dot as the astronomer finishes his calculations. He tilts the astrolabe back and forth, catching the faint starlight on its polished surface. The device glints a brief, rhythmic flash. Then he places it back into its leather pouch dot. The sound of the drawstring pulling shut is a soft zip dot. The world returns to the silence of the desert. The stars continue to drift. The earth continues to turn. And you, like the ancient astronomer, are part of this great, slow movement. You are a point of consciousness in a universe of perfect geometry. The silent astrolabe is tucked away. The calculations are complete. The heavens are in their proper place. You can feel the rotation of the planet, now a gentle tilting sensation that lulls you deeper into the darkness. There is nothing left to track. There is nothing left to measure. There is only the vast, star-filled silence and the slow, rhythmic drift toward the dawn. The history of the stars is the history of us. And tonight, that history is very, very quiet. Take a long, slow breath and let the cool air of the ancient world settle into your lungs. We have looked at the gear, the metal, and the stars. But now, we must look at the mind behind them. We must ask, who was the architect? Who was the individual who sat in the dust 12,000 years ago and saw, not just a stone or a stick, but a blueprint for the impossible? In the boring history of our species, we often imagine the prehistoric person as a creature of impulse, driven only by hunger or fear. But tonight, we visualize a different kind of ancestor. We visualize the engineer. Imagine a man named Elu. He lives in a world of raw textures, the rough bark of the cedar, the sharp edge of flint, the cold fluidity of the river. Elu does not have a desk. He does not have paper or a pen. His laboratory is a flat stretch of damp sand by the riverbank, smoothed by the morning tide. His day begins not with work, but with observation. This is the foundation of all ancient technology, the ability to sit perfectly, still and watch. El. You watches the way a spider constructs its web. He doesn't see a bug trap. He sees a radial grid. He notices how the spider anchors the silk, how it measures the distance between the spokes using its own body as a compass. He watches the way the water swirls around a rock in the stream, creating a perfect, repeating vortex. Swirl, ripple, fade, swirl, ripple, fade. To Elu, nature is a library of blueprints. He sees the spiral of a ram's horn and realizes it is a mathematical curve that maintains its shape even as it grows. He picks up a nautilus shell and runs his thumb over the chambers. It is smooth, rhythmic, and perfectly proportioned. This is the boring labor of the prehistoric engineer, the endless hours of tactile learning. Visualize Elu sitting in the shade of a limestone overhang. He has a piece of charcoal in his hand and a flat, bleached mammoth bone on his lap. He is drawing. He isn't drawing a hunt or a god. He is drawing a circle. But he is not satisfied with a rough circle. He wants a circle that matches the diameter of the sun. He uses a string made of dried sinew. He holds one end down with a heavy pebble and rotates the charcoal. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The sound of the charcoal against the bone is dry and rhythmic. It is a lonely sound, but to Elu, it is the sound of order. He is translating the patterns he saw in the spider's web and the river's vortex into a physical plan. He is inventing the concept of ratio. He realizes that if he makes a wheel with 12 notches and connects it to a wheel with 60 notches, he can capture the relationship between the moon and the sun. He is building a bridge between the physical world and the abstract world of numbers. The life of this ancient architect was one of immense patience. There were no shortcuts. If Elu wanted to test a design, he had to carve it out of wood or soft soapstone. He would spend weeks shaping a single prototype gear, only to find that the teeth didn't mesh. What did he do then? He didn't get angry. He didn't rush. In the boring history of the ancestors, failure was just another rhythm. He would take a deep breath, smooth out his sand map, and begin again. Brush away the sand. Start the line. Brush away the sand. Start the line. Think about the focus required to hold a complex mechanical design in one's head without the help of a computer screen. Elu had to visualize the three-dimensional interaction of gears, the flow of molten metal, and the alignment of the stars all at once. His mind was a quiet humming machine of its own. He was a man who noticed the anomalies. While others looked at a piece of copper ore and saw a heavy stone, Elu noticed that when it sat in the heart of a very hot fire, it bled a liquid that turned back into stone when it cooled, but a stone that could be hammered and shaped. He saw the potential for a new material world. Imagine Elu in the evening, sitting by a small fire. The rest of the tribe is sleeping. They're breathing a soft, collective hushing sound in the dark. Elu is looking at his blueprints on the bone. He is thinking about the gear we found in the trench. He is thinking about how to make it permanent. He realizes that wood will rot, stone will crack, but the metal of the fire will last. He is designing for us. He is designing for people who will live 10,000 years after his name has been forgotten. This is the mystery of lost designs. We find the artifact, but the blueprints are gone. They were drawn in the sand, etched on bone, or whispered in the ears of apprentices. They were part of a silent literacy, a knowledge passed down through the hands, not the eyes. As you lie there, think about the quiet dignity of Li's life. He wasn't a king or a warrior. He was a man who saw the geometry in a leaf and the ratio in a shadow. He was the one who realized that the world could be measured, and if it could be measured, it could be understood. The blueprint of the ancestors is still around us. It is in the way we build our bridges, the way we design our watches, and the way we seek patterns in the chaos. Elu is gone, his laboratory washed away by 1,000 years of rain. But his boring, patient thought lives on in the bronze gear. The wind outside your window is the same wind that cooled the sweat on Elu's brow as he worked his charcoal. The silence of the night is the same silence he used to find his focus. You can feel the blueprint of sleep, now a slow, geometric descent from the waking world into the world of dreams. It is a design that nature perfected long ago. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to build. You only need to follow the rhythm of your breath, just as Elu followed the rhythm of his tools. In, out, draw the line. Smooth the sand. In, out, the architect is at rest. The design is complete. The world is in its proper proportions. Close your eyes and let your mind drift to a place of absolute shadows. Imagine you are standing in the deepest chamber of an ancient temple, miles away from the nearest electric grid. There are no wires here. There is no hum of a modern generator. The darkness is thick, like a physical weight, pressing gently against your skin. It is a darkness that has remained undisturbed for thousands of years. And yet, in the center of this room, there is a soft, pulsing glow. It is not the violent, flickering orange of a torch, nor the smoky yellow of an oil lamp. It is a steady, cool, ethereal light, a pale lemon-yellow radiance that seems to emanate from the very air itself. Tonight, we explore the spark in the dark. We move away from the heavy gears and the massive stones to look at something much smaller, much quieter, and perhaps much more mysterious. The theory of forgotten energy. In the world of boring history, we are taught that the light of the ancients came only from fire. We are told of the soot-stained ceilings of the pyramids and the dim flickering of tallow candles. But what if there was another way? What if, in the slow, patient observations of the ancient chemists, a different kind of spark was found? Think of the Baghdad battery. Visualize a simple clay jar, no larger than your hand. It is an unremarkable object, the kind of jar that might have held wine or oil. But inside, there is a secret. There is a cylinder of hammered copper, and inside that copper cylinder, a single rod of iron. The top is sealed with asphalt, the same black. Sticky bitumen used to waterproof the hulls of ancient ships. Imagine the process of charging this jar. There is no plug, no socket. Instead, there is the slow, rhythmic pouring of a liquid. Perhaps it is fermented grape juice, or a strong, sharp vinegar made from dates. This is the electrolyte, a liquid rich in ions. Glug, glug, glug. As the acidic liquid fills the space between the copper and the iron, a silent, invisible transformation begins. At the molecular level, electrons are being traded. The copper wants them. The iron gives them up. It is a slow, chemical heartbeat. It isn't a bolt of lightning. It is a tiny, persistent flow of energy, as gentle as the movement of a slow-moving stream. If you were to touch the two poles of this jar, you wouldn't feel a shock. You would feel nothing at all. But if you connected 10 of these jars in a row, a silent, ceramic parade of batteries, you would create a steady potential. In the boring history for sleep, we don't rush to the conclusion of light bulbs and high voltage. Instead, we imagine the gentle glow. Imagine a glass vessel, perhaps blown from the river of molten glass we discussed in Chapter 5. Inside this vessel, a thin filament of carbonized bamboo or a strip of silver leaf hangs in a partial vacuum. When the wires from the clay jars are connected to this vessel, the darkness of the chamber begins to soften. It doesn't happen all at once. It is a gradual transition. First, the glass begins to shimmer. Then, a faint, ghostly light appears, a spark in the dark that produces no heat and no smoke. Visualize the scientist of 12,000 years ago sitting by this light. To them, this wasn't electricity in the way we think of it. It was captured light. It was the spirit of the sun trapped in a jar of vinegar. Think about the implications of a smokeless light. In the deep subterranean tombs of Egypt and the tunnels of the Andes, we find paintings so vibrant and detailed that they must have required hours of focused labor. Yet, on many of these ceilings, there is no soot, no black carbon from torches. The air remained clean. Perhaps they worked by the light of a chemical lamp. Imagine the silence of such a laboratory. The only sound is the occasional drip of the vinegar or the soft scuff of a sandal on the stone floor. The light is so steady that it doesn't cast moving shadows. It allows the eye to rest, to focus on the microscopic details of the bronze gears or the fine engravings on an astrolabe dot. This is the beauty of forgotten energy. It wasn't designed to power a city or move a train. It was designed to provide a moment of clarity in the darkness. It was a tool of the mind, not the factory. Consider the light source myths of the ancient world. The Greeks spoke of ever-burning lamps found in the tombs of heroes, lamps that stayed lit for centuries without a drop of oil. The Hindus spoke of Ugni spark held in vessels of clay. In our modern arrogance, we call these stories fantasies. But in the boring history of the earth, we recognize that myths are often just technical manuals that have lost their diagrams. The chemistry of the battery is the chemistry of the earth itself. The copper, the iron, the bitumen, and the acid of the fruit, all of it is natural. Our ancestors didn't invent energy. They simply learned how to invite it into a jar. As you lie in the dark of your own room, imagine a single clay jar sitting on your bedside table. It is cool to the touch. Inside, the vinegar is still. The ions are moving in their slow, predictable dance. There is no noise, no vibration. Just the potential for a spark. The light in your mind begins to dim now, returning to that soft, lemon-yellow hue. It is a light that doesn't demand your attention. It is a light that invites sleep. It is the glow of 1,000 years of patient experimentation, finally coming to rest. The spark in the dark is not a mystery to be solved. It is a sensation to be felt. It is the knowledge that even in the deepest, most primitive past, humanity found a way to push back the shadows. We have always been seekers of the light, whether that light came from a crackling fire or the silent, steady pulse of a ceramic battery. The jars are still there, buried in the silt of the Tigris and the sands of the Gobi, their copper hearts waiting for someone to pour the vinegar once more. But for tonight, the jars are empty. The chemical dance has slowed to a stop. The darkness is once again total, but it is no longer a heavy darkness. It is a light, breathable darkness, filled with the peace of a world that knows how to find its own way through the night. Your breath is steady. Your room is dark. The spark has faded into the long, quiet history of the earth. Let your mind drift now to a place of perfect proportions. Imagine you are standing in the center of a vast, silent plain. Before you rises a structure so immense, so precisely aligned, that it feels less like a building and more like a mountain that has been taught to speak the language of mathematics. Tonight, we explore the language of symmetry. We move beyond the small, handheld gears and batteries to the grand scale of the world's ancient ruins. We look at the repetition of numbers, those silent, boring constants that appear in the stones of the Great Pyramid, the temples of Cambodia, and the alignments of Stonehenge. In this world of sleep, there is no chaos. There is only the rhythm of the number dot. Imagine the Great Pyramid of Giza. It is not just a tomb of stone. It is a library of geometry. Visualize the base of the pyramid. It is a perfect square, covering 13 acres. But as you walk along its perimeter, you notice something extraordinary. Despite its massive scale, the four sides are aligned to the cardinal points of the compass, north, south, east, and west, with an accuracy of within 3/60ths of a degree. Think about that number, 3/60ths. It is a precision that the human eye cannot even perceive without instruments. To achieve this, the ancient architects did not use computers. They used the symmetry of the stars. They watched the transit of the circumpolar stars, those celestial lights that never set, and marked the center point of their swing. Mark, wait, mark. Repetition of this act, night after night, created a line of truth on the earth. Now, consider the numbers hidden in the dimensions. If you take the perimeter of the pyramid's base and divide it by twice its height, you arrive at a very specific number, 3.14159. This is pi, the fundamental constant of the circle. This number governs the shape of every bubble, every planet, and every atom in the universe. Why is the ratio of a circle hidden in a square pyramid? It is because the pyramid was designed to be a map of the hemisphere. It is a mathematical representation of the curved earth, projected onto flat, triangular faces. In the boring history of our ancestors, they understood that the earth was a sphere long before they had ships to sail around it. They knew this because they spoke the language of symmetry. They saw that the shadows changed length as they moved north or south. They measured the shadow, and in doing so, they measured the world. As you lie there, imagine the number 43,200. This is a rhythmic number. If you multiply the height of the Great Pyramid by 43,200, you get the polar radius of the Earth. If you multiply the perimeter of the base by 43,200, you get the equatorial circumference of the planet. Why 43,200? Because it is a multiple of the precession of the equinoxes. That's slow. 25,920-year wobble of the Earth we discussed in the chapter of the astrolabe. 25,920 divided by 60. Multiplied by 100. The numbers flow into one another like a slow-moving river. There is no tension here, only the comfort of knowing that the universe is built on a grid. The ancients didn't just build a monument. They built a calculator made of 6 million tons of limestone. Visualize the stones themselves. Each one is a masterclass in symmetry. In the king's chamber, the granite blocks weigh up to 80 tons each. They are fitted together so tightly that you cannot slide a human hair between them. There is no mortar. There is only the perfection of the cut. Imagine the sound of the stone cutters scrape, polish, scrape, polish. They use sand as an abrasive, moving a flat copper plate back and forth over the granite for hundreds of hours. It is the most boring work imaginable, yet it produced a surface so flat that it mirrors the precision of an optical lens. This symmetry is not confined to Egypt. Travel in your mind to the jungles of Cambodia, to the temple of Angkor Wat. Here, the distances between the central towers and the outer walls are not random. They correspond to the number of days in the lunar and solar years. The temple is a stone calendar. When the sun rises on the spring equinox, it sits perfectly on the tip of the central spire. It is a moment of mathematical oneness. For 1 minute, the architecture, the sun, and the rotation of the earth are in perfect alignment. Think about the number 108. It appears everywhere. In the ruins of the East, there are 108 towers at the Bayon. There are 108 beads on a prayer string. Even the distance between the earth and the sun is roughly 108 times the diameter of the sun dot. Is it a coincidence? In the language of symmetry, there are no coincidences. There are only patterns that we have forgotten how to read. Our ancestors lived in a world of sacred proportions. They believed that if they built their houses and temples using the same ratios found in the human body, the golden ratio, or $phi, they would live in harmony with the cosmos. Visualize the golden spiral. You see it in the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. You see it in the curve of a hurricane. You see it in the shape of a distant galaxy. And you see it in the floor plans of ancient Greek temples. Spiral in, spiral out. The repetition of these patterns acts as a lullaby for the mind. You don't need to understand the math to feel the symmetry. You feel it in the balance of the air. You feel it in the way your heart rate slows as you imagine the vast, stable weight of the pyramids. The stones have stayed in place for thousands of years because they are in static equilibrium. They are at rest. They have found their perfect center of gravity. You are finding your center of gravity now, too. The numbers 43,200, 108, 3.14 are fading into the background, becoming a soft hum of logic that protects your sleep. The world is not a chaotic place. It is a carefully constructed masterpiece of symmetry, and you are a part of that design. The great ruins are silent now. The tourists have gone. The desert wind is the only thing moving through the corridors of stone. But the numbers remain. They are etched into the foundations, waiting for the stars to align once more. As you breathe in, imagine the symmetry of your own lungs. As you breathe out, imagine the symmetry of the horizon. You are balanced. You are aligned. You are at rest in the center of the great language. Take a very slow, deep breath and feel the stillness of the room around you. We have traveled through the heat of the forge, the precision of the gears, and the grand symmetry of the pyramids. But now we must face the most patient force of all, time. We must look at the great forgetting. Imagine a city of marble and bronze, vibrant with the sounds of industry and the light of the chemical lamps we once discussed. Now, imagine the sound of a single, dry leaf skittering across a deserted plaza. Scritch, scritch. Rich. History is not a straight line of progress. It is a series of waves rising in brilliance and breaking and receding back into the dark ocean of the past. Tonight, we sit by that receding tide and watch as the dust of centuries settles over the machines, returning them to the cradle of the earth. The great forgetting is not a violent event. It is a slow, rhythmic process of neglect. It begins with a single missed maintenance. A gear is not oiled. A roof tile is not replaced. A blueprint is misplaced in a library that no one visits anymore. Visualize the bronze gear we found in the trench. 12,000 years ago, it was the heart of a navigator's masterpiece. But as the civilization that built it began to fade, perhaps due to a shift in the climate, or a drying river, or simply a loss of the boring patience required to sustain it, the machine stopped turning. First, the dust arrives dotted as a fine, microscopic silt, carried on the back of the desert wind. It settles in the grooves of the gear teeth. It fills the indentations of this silent astrolabe. Day by day, year by year, the dust builds a thin gray veil. Sift, settle, still, then comes the oxidation. The air, which once gave life to the craftsmen, now begins to eat away at their work. The bright, golden luster of the bronze turns to a dull brown, then to that deep emerald green patina we admired in the laboratory. The metal isn't dying. It is simply returning to its mineral state. It is trying to become a rock again. In the boring history of the world, we ask, how could we forget such wonders? How could a society that moved 800-ton monoliths simply vanish? The answer lies in the fragility of knowledge. Think of the silent literacy, the secrets of the forge and the geometry of the stars that were passed from master to apprentice through word and touch. When a city is abandoned, when the schools are closed, and the traditions are broken, that knowledge evaporates like mist in the morning sun. The books made of papyrus, leather, or wood are the first to go. They crumble into ash in the humidity. The metal is melted down by later, desperate generations to make spearheads or plowshares. The impossible technology is seen as nothing more than scrap metal by those who have forgotten its purpose. Imagine a farmer 500 years after the fall of the great architects. He finds a strange geared device while tilling his field. He doesn't see a computer. He doesn't see a calendar. He sees a heavy, useless object. He tosses it to the edge of the field, where it is slowly covered by the roots of a gnarled olive tree. The tree grows. Its roots wrap around the bronze, pulling it deeper into the cool, dark soil. The earth is a jealous mother. She wants her elements back. She uses the rain to wash the silt over the artifact, sealing it in a tomb of clay. Drip. Wash. Bury. This is the melancholy of entropy. It is the realization that everything built by human hands is in a state of slow-motion collapse. But there is a peace in this realization. There is a comfort in knowing that the earth is a perfect archivist. What she takes, she preserves. She hides the gears and the batteries in her deep B-horizon layers, protecting them from the wars and the fires of the surface world. Think of the Library of Alexandria, or the lost halls of the Maya. We mourn their loss. But in the boring history of sleep, we realize that they are not truly gone. Their atoms are still here. Their geometry is still written in the ruins. They are just waiting for a different kind of time. Visualize the silent, underwater ruins of a city lost to the rising seas. The pillars are covered in barnacles and kelp. The statues of the great engineers are now homes for the slow-moving starfish. The rhythmic swaying of the ocean currents is the only clock that remains. Sway, drift, sway. Great forgetting is necessary for the great remembering. The earth must sleep so that it can dream of new forms. The dust must settle so that one day, 1,000 years from now, a brush can move it aside once more. You can feel the dust of sleep settling over your own thoughts now. The worries of the day, the complexities of the modern world, the noise of the now, they are all being covered by a fine, soft layer of stillness. You are allowing yourself to be reclaimed by the rhythm of the night. The machines are quiet. The fires are out. The blueprints have returned to the sand. But the symmetry remains. Even in the forgetting, the math stays true. The stars continue their 25,920-year wobble, unbothered by whether anyone is tracking them with a bronze disk dot as you drift deeper into the darkness. Imagine the Earth as a vast, silent library. You are a book being closed for the night. You are an artifact being tucked into the protective embrace of the clay. There is no need to remember anything. There is no need to hold on to the light. The great forgetting is not a tragedy. It is a lullaby. It is the earth saying, "Rest now. I will hold your secrets until the morning." The wind has died down. The skittering leaf is still. The city of marble is a dream, and the dream is enough. You are sinking slowly through the layers of time, past the bronze, past the stone, past the fire, into the deep, quiet foundation of the world. That the long day of discovery has finally come to an end. The desert air has lost the sharp sting of the afternoon sun, replaced by a deep, cooling blue that feels like water against the skin. We have traveled through the fires of the forge, the geometry of the stars, and the melancholy silence of the great forgetting. Now we return to the quietest moment of all, the final sleep of the artifact. Take a very slow, intentional breath. Feel the stillness in your hands and the heaviness in your limbs. We are coming back to the present, back to the trench where our journey began, but the world feels different now. It feels older. It feels more patient. Imagine the artifact, the impossible gear, resting on a soft bed of white velvet inside a padded transport crate. After 12,000 years of being held by the rough, mineral embrace of the red clay, it is now held by the gentle hands of the modern world. But as you look at it under the dim light of the base camp, you realize that it does not belong to us. It belongs to the long night. The archaeologists speak in hushed tones. There is no excitement left, only a profound sense of awe that has settled into a quiet fatigue. The crates are being sealed. The sound of the tape sliding across the cardboard is alone. Rhythmic zip, dot, zip. Press. Still dot. The artifact is being prepared for a museum, a place of glass cases and silent hallways. It will sit on a pedestal, illuminated by a single steady LED spotlight. Thousands of people will walk past it, their reflections flickering in the glass. They will see a fragment of bronze, a curiosity from a time they cannot comprehend. But in the boring history of the object, the museum is just a blink of an eye. Imagine the gear sitting in that glass case. It doesn't hear the footsteps of the tourists. It doesn't feel the hum of the air conditioning. It is still vibrating to the frequency of the earth. It remembers the weight of the 800-ton monoliths. It remembers the smell of the vinegar in the clay batteries. It is a passenger on a journey that spans eons, and the museum is merely a rest stop. Or perhaps, imagine a different ending. Imagine that the lead archaeologist looks at the gear and then looks at the rising moon. He feels the weight of the great forgetting. He realizes that some secrets are not meant to be cataloged and labeled. He realizes that the artifact is a seed of knowledge that has already bloomed, and returned to the earth, that he takes the gear back to the edge of Trench 7. A site is being decommissioned. The funding has run dry. The world has moved on to a new crisis, a new noise. He places the artifact back into the hollow where it was found. He doesn't throw it. He sets it down with the reverence one might show a sleeping child. Then, the process of backfilling begins. Visualize the first shovel of dirt falling back into the pit. Thud. Sift. Silence. A fine, golden dust begins to cover the green patina once more. The air is pushed out. The darkness returns. The gear is no longer an object of study. It is once again a part of the geology. It is being tucked back into the B horizon, shielded by layers of silt, volcanic ash, and the roots of desert shrubs. This is the long night. It is a sleep that lasts for thousands of years. Above the ground, empires will rise. Great cities will be built of glass and steel, and they too will eventually crumble into the dust. Wars will be fought over borders that the stars do not recognize. Languages will be born and die, turning into whispers that no one understands. And all the while, the gear remains. It sits in the cool, constant temperature of the deep earth, roughly 55 degrees Fahrenheit, year after year, century after century. It is a masterpiece of symmetry waiting in the dark. It is not lonely. To a machine built for the stars, 1,000 years is just one slow rotation of a great, celestial wheel. Look up at the night sky one last time in your mind. The stars are moving in their perfect 25,920-year wobble. The Great Pyramid is still aligned with the belt of Orion, even if the sand has climbed halfway up its sides. The language of symmetry is still being spoken by the universe, even if there is no one left to listen. The passage of eons is a rhythmic, soothing thing. It is the sound of the wind eroding a mountain. It is the sound of a river carving a canyon. It is the sound of your own heart, beating in time with the ancient engineers who saw the same moon you see now. The desert is now completely dark. The base camp has been packed away. The tire tracks in the sand are already being smoothed over by the evening breeze. Soon, there will be no sign that we were ever here. The impossible technology is safe once more, held in the unyielding, loving grip of the earth. You are drifting now. You are leaving the trench, leaving the desert, leaving the gears and the monoliths behind. You are moving into your own long night of rest. The story has faded into the background, becoming a soft, gray mist of information. The numbers -108, 43,200, dollar, pi dollar, are gone. The heat of the forge has cooled. The spark in the dark has gone out, leaving only the peaceful, heavy comfort of the blankets. The artifact is asleep. The earth is asleep, and you are asleep. The long night is not an end. It is a continuation. It is the space between the breaths of the universe. It is the boring history of forever, where everything that was once known is kept safe, waiting for the light of a distant future dawn. Sleep now. The gears have stopped turning. The stars are in their places. The world is quiet.